Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Book and Banter Society. I am your humble host. My name is Lisa, and this time, boy, I got an interesting one for you this time. It's not every day I can say Denzel Washington in a horror movie, right? But yes, Denzel. Yes, he was in a horror movie. So we are going to talk about it a little bit and let's check it out. I am talking about the movie Fallen, rated R, 1998, with a running time of 2 hours and 4 minutes. And as usual, two things we got to get out the way. First one is the disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed on the Book and Banter Society are my opinions and my opinions alone. I am not a professional movie critic. I just like movies and I'm sharing some of them with you. And also, too, keep in mind with some of these movies, you may be triggered because there is violence, there's cussing, some of the dialogue may not be politically correct. So I'm just letting you know when we're talking about these movies and everything involved, you have been warned. And second of all, spoiler alert. Now, I never give away the endings of any of the movies I talk about. However, I talk about everything else. So I'm going to talk about the movie leading up until the ending. So I'm never going to tell you the ending because I want you to watch the movie, have your own opinions, and check it out yourself. And don't forget to like and subscribe and also hit that notification button. So whenever I do a new video, you'll be the first one to know. And also, too, look, the holiday seasons are coming up. Did you know I'm an author? Yes, I am. So check out my book, The Creeping Things and Other Tales of Madness and Mayhem. My book features 31 short horror stories. So go ahead and check them out and see what you think. And hey, like I said, Christmas is right around the corner. So this would be an excellent gift and actually a unique one as well. And last but certainly not least, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I enjoy talking about these movies, and when you tune in, it makes it even better. So, all right, you guys, let's get started with the movie Fallen. Now, this movie was released on January the 16th, 1998. And up until that point, Denzel was already a superstar. He was already an A list movie star. Some of the movies that he did prior to this movie was in 1996, The Preacher's Wife with Whitney Houston. Crimson Tide, 1995, with Gene Hackman. Philadelphia, that movie came out in 1993 with Tom Hanks. That movie was very successful, but not only that, Bruce Springsteen sang the lead song for the movie. And also in 1993, The Pelican Brief came out, and he starred in that film with Julia Roberts. And of course, we know, or you should know, in 1992, Denzel played none other than Malcolm X. Very controversial back then. So anyway, to make a long story short, we're in 1998. So Denzel is doing great in his career. However, this particular movie that I'm going to talk about did not do so well at the box office. And I had to go back to find out why. Because if you've noticed, no one doesn't even talk about this movie. It's like, how can you not talk about this movie? This is Denzel Washington. And I'm going to tell you why. Why no one talks about this movie and why people have forgotten about it? One word: Titanic, yes. Titanic was released a few weeks before Fallen was released. And if you remember the frenzy around Titanic, it was unbelievable. For those of you out there who weren't born yet or you were too young to remember, the movie Titanic was everywhere. And Celine Dion sung the title track to the movie. You have Leonardo DiCaprio as the lead with Kate Winslet. I mean, come on. So yeah, so even Denzel Washington got lost in the sauce on that one. But had not Titanic been released a few weeks prior, this movie would have done better. And not only that, you would have remembered this movie. But since then, I guess you could say this movie has what they always say a cult following. So there's always new people discovering this movie, and they're actually shocked that what? Denzel was in some kind of supernatural movie. Yes, he was. So, all right, enough of all that. Let's really dive into the movie. The movie starts off with Denzel. He's scrambling in the snow. We have no idea why he's doing this, but he is doing narration. And the narration is saying, "Did I ever tell you about the time I almost died?" Now we see a lot of commotion outside of a prison. It's just mayhem. And that is because an infamous serial killer by the name of Edgar Reese is set to be executed that night.
And we see two men standing outside. They're kind of like away from the commotion, they're away from the crowd. And Denzel's Washington's character is Detective John Hobbs, and he is standing next to his boss, Lieutenant Stanton. And Lieutenant Stanton is like, "Oh, so is this number six? Is this a six notch on your belt?" And Detective Hobbs is like, "Well, actually, this is number eight." So they joke just a little bit. And then all of a sudden, a side door opens, and one of the guards calls out to Detective Hobbs and lets him know he is wanted inside. Both of them look surprised, but Detective Hobbs goes into the building. And here is the serial killer himself, Edgar Reese. And actually, he's the one that summoned Detective Hobbs into the building because actually, Detective Hobbs is the one that took him down. And it's because of Detective Hobbs that Reese is going to be put to death tonight. So Hobbs sits down in front of Reese, and Reese, as you can see, he's getting ready to sit down, and Reese is like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be famous," and he's very obnoxious, and he just said, "Yeah, I want to see the man that took me down," and all of this stuff. So he's just very obnoxious. Then he sticks his hand out between the bars, wanting Hobbs to shake his hand. And so, okay, Hobbs shakes his hand. But then all of a sudden, Reese grabs his hand kind of tight. And the next thing you know, he starts doing this chant. All of a sudden, he's like, it's like, oh no, what the hell is going on? So Hobbs is like, "Yeah, I'm going to let his hand go." So he lets his hand go, and he's looking like, "This guy is crazy." And then all of a sudden, Reese is like, "Hey, you want to know a riddle?" And it's like, "What? What are you talking about?" And then all of a sudden, Reese says, "Why is there a space between Lions and Bukowski?" And Hobbs is kind of like, uh, "Guard, open the gate." He's like, "You know what? I'm out of here." Then he tells Hobbs, you know what? What goes around really goes around. So Hobbs is like, have a safe trip, you hear? And then that's when Reese is like, yeah, I'll be seeing you. It's like, okay. And then that's when Hobbs leaves the room. And Reese, he does his perp walk, for the last time, and he gets strapped in by this young gentleman here. And Reese is just obnoxious. He says some obnoxious things to this guy, but this guy just goes ahead and straps him in. And now we see Hobbs and Lieutenant Stanton. They're actually going to witness the execution. And Reese is saying all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, he starts singing an old Rolling Stones song called Time is on My Side. So, if you guys have never heard of that song before, it's actually a good song. So, yeah, so all of a sudden, he's like, Time is on my side. Yes, it is. And it's like, okay. And in just a few minutes, Reese meets his demise. And then it's like this invisible force that pans over Reese's body. Then it kind of glides up above the witnesses to his execution. Then this invisible force moves over to where the prison guard was. And as you can see, the prison guard is looking directly at us at the camera. And then it almost seems like the force, I don't know if it goes in him. We don't know at this point. But the next thing you know, he kind of, I don't know, it looks like he kind of smiles a little bit, which is, very creepy. So later on that night, I mean, Hobbs is like, I need a drink. So he goes into the local bar, and it's a bar that him and his coworkers always goes to. He knows the hostess there. And then he sees himself on TV at the bar. So as you can see, he's looking at the TV. It's like, hey, that's me. And then him and his coworkers, they do a little joking and, stuff like that. And one of his coworkers is like, well, so how was the execution? And Hobbs is like, well, he's dead. Meanwhile, remember this guy right here? One of the guys that works at the prison. Remember, he was the one that strapped in the serial killer Reese. But not only that, he was also the one that did the handle to emit the poisonous gas. So, yes. So, after all that, I guess he's like, you know what? I'm going to go out and get me a sandwich, get me something to eat. And the streets are crowded. People are ordering their food, they're laughing, and they're having a really good time. So he's walking up, getting ready to look at the food, probably place an order. And then he bumps into this guy right here with the hat on. Okay, so no big deal, right? It's crowded. People bump into people all the time. So now the guy with the hat, he bumps into this lady right here. And then this lady right here, I don't know, she gets a kind of weird look on her face. And then it looks like the guy she's with or whatever, she gives him, it looks like that's her trash where she just finished eating a sandwich or something. So she turns to him and gives him the sandwich wrapper, and then he looks kind of like with no emotion. So he walks over to throw it in the trash can. So he throws the wrapper in the trash can, and then he kind of like bumps this guy with the cap on. And it's like, uh oh, are they going to go to blows or something? Because both of them kind of glance at each other with no emotion. So anyway, the black guy bumps him and then he just leaves. And now you can see the guy with the cap on, he just has no emotion and he just starts walking. So now the guy with the cap on, he's like, there's like this line, people are trying to order food. And then you see he touches that guy right there with the bag in his hand. Ooh, and look at that guy's face. Right after he touches this guy, his face starts changing a little bit. It's like, what? But he still has his bag of food and he continues to walk across the street. So the gentleman goes across the street to hand this guy right here the food, and this guy with the glasses is his boss. And his boss says something to the effect like, oh, what took you so long? Or I don't know, something like that. And then the guy out of character is like, man, F you. What would you look like if someone took that sandwich and shoved it? you know? And his boss is looking at him like, seriously? Are you crazy? And that's when the guy was like, well, I guess this is my last day at work. And then he just leaves. And his boss is just looking at him like, wow, so out of character. That was interesting. Now we see Hobbs. Hobbs was in the bed snoring, slobbering, catching some Z's. Then all of a sudden his phone rings. He picks it up and no one responds. So he glances at his caller ID and look what it says, number blocked. So he has no idea who just called him. And when he picked up the phone, he doesn't know why they didn't say anything. Okay, so now it's the next morning and we see Hobbs. And Hobbs is up getting ready to go to work, but he's not alone. The little boy right there is his nephew, Sam. And the gentleman wearing the glasses is his mentally disabled brother, Arthur. So the little boy, Sam, he leaves to go to school. They send him on his way, and Hobbs sits down, and Arthur sits down, and Arthur, you can kind of tell something's on his mind. And he was like, well, do you ever think that it would be easier? Well, maybe if me and Sam weren't living with you, maybe Mossy, maybe maybe she wouldn't have left you. So, he's thinking out loud, but he's talking to Hobbs. And that's when Hobbs looks him dead in his face and says, forget Mossy, all right? If she loved me, she would have never left me anyway. And he just goes on to basically tell him, I love having you here. I love Sam here. Hey, it is all good. And as you can see, that makes Art feel better. And so they joke a little more, and everything is A-OK. Well, when I say everything is okay, I'm saying everything is okay right now in the Hobbs household. Because as we can see, someone else is getting ready in the morning. And remember him? That was the guy from last night. That's the one that started looking weird, cussed out his boss, all that good stuff. Well, now we see him. He's eating his cereal, and I don't know. Well, I was going to say get ready to go to work, but nope. Because remember, he told his boss to kiss my A. So, nope, that's not what he's doing. So, he's just eating his breakfast.
Oh, wow. Look at this. He's meanwhile brushing his teeth and examining his teeth. But look, we have a body in the bathtub. So it looks like he broke into this apartment and, well, offed this guy right here that lived in the apartment. And now he's eating breakfast in this guy's apartment and he's getting ready to brush his teeth and leave. It's like, oh my God, what the heck happened? So weird. Hobbs is now entering the police station. We know he had a good conversation with his brother, his nephew, got his cup of coffee, breakfast, so he is set and ready to go to work. However, what Hobbs doesn't know is that there's a creepy guy standing right across the street from the police station, and he's watching the front door. And he's also right in front of a payphone. Hobbs enters the police station. He says good morning to everybody. You know, that good morning banter that you do at work. And then all of a sudden, uh, the administrative assistant is like, "Hey, Hobbs, you got a call." And he goes, "Yeah, okay, just transfer it over to my desk." So she does. And there's a man on the line, and he's like, "Hey, pal, you got a pen?" And Hobbs is like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And he goes, "Hey, I want you to go down to this address, apartment number 2. You're going to find something there." Hobbs writes down the address. He doesn't think that much of it. Then he turns to his coworker named Jonesy and he goes, "Remember when I used to get phone calls from Reese? Remember they used to happen at 2 or 3 in the morning? Well, somebody called me last night and then just hung up." And his coworker's like, "Oh, okay." Imagine that. His coworker didn't think too much of it. So Hobbs, he goes to the administrative assistant and he says, "Hey, why don't you send a car over to this address and make sure we can gain entry?" And she's like, "Okay, do we got a body there or what?" And Hobbs is like, "Nah, I think it's just somebody, some knucklehead goofing off. Maybe they saw me on TV or, something like that." And then he turns to her and he goes, "You know what? How'd I look, by the way, last night? How'd I look on TV? Did you see me? I was on 4 different channels. What did I look like?" And she said something like, "Yeah, yeah, you look great, gorgeous, just gorgeous," And then Hobbs starts laughing. Hobbs and Jonesy, they go to the address that the caller said to go to. And Jonesy is talking to one of the policemen that is on the scene. They've entered the apartment. The policeman is saying, "Hey, the superintendent of the building said this person, had no family, no friends, no nothing." So Jonesy and Hobbs, they're looking around the apartment. Jonesy is taking pictures. And they also notice too the cereal and the milk. It's kind of like nice and neat. And they're like, "Well, it looks like whoever off this guy, it looks like they just relaxed and had breakfast." And then Jonesy goes into the living room and he tells Hobbs, "Hey, check this out." And when Hobbs sees what Jonesy is showing him, Hobbs is like, "Oh no." And Jonesy's looking at him like, "What?" And look what someone wrote on the wall. And Hobbs is like, "Reese, the serial killer. He told me a riddle. And the riddle was, what's the space between lions and Spakowski?" So Hobbs is a little freaked out here. And Jonesy, he takes his camera and he takes a picture of it. Back at the police station, the lieutenant is like, so what? Do you think Reese, he has an accomplice or something?" And Hobbs is like, "I don't know, unless there's some kind of copycat running around. I don't know. Maybe it's one of the prison guards, or maybe it's someone that was involved in making the documentary about him." He's like, "I have no idea." So the lieutenant leaves And then Hobbs turns to one of his coworkers and he says, "Hey, do you like riddles and stuff like that?" And she's like, "Yeah, whatever. I like trivia, whatever." And so Hobbs says, "Hey, what's between lions and Spakowski?" And she's like, "What?" She's like, "That's not even a riddle." It's like, "Come on, you gotta give me something to go on." She's disappointed, like, "Man, I thought this was a riddle." It's like, that's nothing. Then all of a sudden, Hobbs's coworker, Lou, the guy with the tie on, says, "Hey, I remember we had a Paskowski in my rookie year on the police force. I remember that name." Oh, and look at the guy in the back. He is really getting the gossip. You talk about ear hustling. Oh my God, it's totally obvious. Look at that. So when Lou says that, automatically Jonesy and Hobbs, they stop what they're doing. And then they look at Lou like, "Come on, man, tell us more." So Lou says, "Man, his name was up on the wall. This guy was a effing legend. But he was the King Kong of a-holes." It's like, okay. So Lou and Hobbs, they go like downstairs in this police basement. And then that's when Lou, he's still talking about Spakowski, and he's telling Hobbs, "Man, this guy was so mean. His wife even shot him in the foot, and he didn't get disability. He couldn't even get disability." And Lou was also telling him that there was a chief. He's the one that started like this plaque and putting names on the wall because he thought it would boost morale. And that particular chief, he kept it on the wall till about 1981, 1982, and then he took it down. And Lou was like, "Hobbs, you don't remember that? This plaque here on the wall? It was downtown in the lobby. You must have passed it 1,000 times." And Hobbs is like, "Nope, I don't remember this at all." And Hobbs is like, "But why is there a space between Lions and Spakowski?" And Lou was like, "You got me, buddy. I don't know." Hobbs is with the lieutenant, and the lieutenant is like, "But why would someone take a name off a plaque? Like, why would they do that?" And Hobbs is like, "I don't know. I called records and they don't know why a name is missing and why it's not there." So the lieutenant is like, "Well, I guess we better find out, huh?" So what Hobbs does is he gets on the internet and he does a little digging. Because remember on the plaque we do have the name Lions. So he types that in and he finds out information on lions. But then there's an article too that makes reference to a man that was cop of the year, a man by the name of Robert Milano. And it's like, huh, I wonder, is that the missing name on the plaque? So the next thing you know, he's back at the police station and he runs into the lieutenant. And Hobbs is like, "Hey, Lieutenant, you're just the man I wanted to see. I finally solved the mystery of the name that's missing on the plaque. The name is Robert Milano and he was Cop of the Year back in 1965. However, the interesting thing about it is 8 months later, he goes up to a cabin in the middle of nowhere and he offs himself." And Hobbs finishes by saying that means two things: either he was a dirty cop or it was a woman. Then the lieutenant is like, "Oh, Milano. Yeah, I met him once. He seemed to be a good cop." Then the lieutenant looks at Hobb straight in his eyes and he says, "Do us all a favor, okay? Whatever you find out, keep it to yourself. And look at Hobbs, he's in disbelief because remember, the lieutenant was like, yeah, we got to find out that missing name. Okay, Hobbs found the missing name. And now you're like, well, whatever you find out, keep it to yourself. So Hobbs is like, what is going on? So then Hobbs sits down, but guess what? He sees his lieutenant again because his lieutenant walks in the room, and Hobbs tells the lieutenant, well, if you keep your mouth shut and somebody ends up dead, you're going to be holding the bag, not me. And then the lieutenant says, well, you know what? When we live in a perfect world, why don't you let me know? It's like, ooh. And then he tells Hobbs, oh, here, by the way, here's a documentary on Reese. And then he throws the VHS tape to Hobbs, and Hobbs catches it. And right now, him and Jonesy, they're talking because Jonesy is saying, "Hey, the gentleman that was found in the bathtub, it looks like someone poisoned him, and it was the same chemicals that Reese would use to poison people." And he's all, "Oh, okay, all right." And he goes, "Well, when are we going to watch that documentary?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know. I guess we'll, watch it sometime today." They're doing little banter. And then Hobbs gets on the phone and he says, to the operator, "Hey, can you check out somebody by the name of Sylvia Milano?" And then the lady on the other line says, "There is no record of a Sylvia Milano." And he says, "Oh, okay. Well, how about why don't you try a Greta Milano?" So the lady is checking, and then all of a sudden, he goes, "You know what? As far as we know, the killer could be a cop." And then Hobbs looks at him and he goes, "You know what? It could be." So now we see Jonesy and Hobbs, and they are reviewing the tape of Edgar Reese. And they're reviewing the day when he was talking to Hobbs. And remember when Reese, he starts saying, "Hashabara," something like that. And then Jonesy is like, what do you think he's saying? And Hobbs is like, "I don't know, a bunch of gibberish, I guess. I don't know." Hobbs is now standing in front of an apartment door, and you hear a lady saying, "Who is it?" And he's saying, "This is Detective John Hobbs. I'm here to see Greta Milano." And then you hear her say, "Oh, yes, you left me a message." And so, he's like, at first, like, "Is she gonna open up the door?" He's looking through the peephole, and then she opens the door slightly. He flashes his badge, and then she reluctantly is like, "Come in." I mean, you can tell she's kinda guarded, and it's like, okay," but she lets him in. So they're in her living room and he looks around and he's like, "Wow, okay, we're surrounded by angels." And they are, because look, there's an angel behind Hobbs. There's two angel pictures behind her. And if you look in the kitchen, it looks like there's an angel on the refrigerator. And then she just tells him, "Yes, I teach theology at the university." And she says, "Well, detective, why do you want to know about my father? Is it out of curiosity or like what is the purpose?" And Hobbs says, "Well, you see, I'm the detective who caught Edgar Reese, the serial killer. I don't know if you know about it, but he was just recently executed." And she was like, "Yeah, I've heard about it." And he said, "Well, in a roundabout way, Reese told me the name of your father." So Greta moves to the kitchen, and this is when things get a little creepy. She looks at Hobbs and she says, "This guy Reese, did he like to sing?" And Hobbs is like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, he liked to sing." And she says, "Did he try to touch or grab you?" And Hobbs smiles a little bit. He goes, "Yeah, he did. He shook my hand. Then Greta says, "You and I, we never spoke. You say nothing to your boss. You say nothing to your partner. Nothing goes in any file. And my name is not on anything." And Hobbs looks at her and says, "Well, do I get a cup of coffee if I say yes?" So she makes him a cup of coffee and then she starts telling him the story. And the story is her father, Robert Milano, he had caught a killer. But after he caught the killer, copycat crimes started. And the next thing you know, evidence started mounting against her father. And a reporter had found out that her father had been under investigation. And she continues, "My father saw the evidence. It was just too much evidence against him. He told my mother he didn't stand a chance to beat it. So he went to this cabin in the mountains. And this cabin had been in my mother's family for generations. My father went up there and, well, and then Greta kind of trails off because we know he ended up, taking his life. And Greta looks at Hobbs and she goes, "I know my father. My father was innocent of all of those charges." And then he looks at her, he's like, "How do you know he was innocent?" It's like, "Ooh, okay." And Greta, she's like, "You know what? Just forget it. This is really not important." And Hobbs looks at her still and he goes, "Well, it's important to me, Miss Milano. Don't you want the killer to be punished? Like, are you afraid like your life may be in danger or something? Is that what you're afraid of?" She looks at him and she says, "Yes." Hobbs can tell that she's not giving away all the information that she has. So he just smiles at her and he stands up and shakes her hand and says, "Thanks for speaking with me and thanks for the coffee. And by the way, if I have any more questions, can I give you a call?" And she says, "Actually, I wish you wouldn't." It's like, okay. So he shuts the apartment door and he's headed down the stairs. Then all of a sudden, Greta quickly opens the door back and she's all, "Detective Hobbs." And he looks back at her and she says, "Do you believe in God?" And he's all, "Well, I go to church every now and then." And he says, "In my line of work, faith, well, that is something a little hard to sustain." And she just looks at him and, he leaves. Now Hobbs has parked his car and he is walking down the street. I assume he's walking towards his apartment where he lives. So as you can see, the mood is kind of creepy, it's eerie, and as he is walking, the streets are quiet, but Hobbs loves it. He loves the night. Walking at night, it's nice and peaceful. So he sees a gentleman walking towards him and he doesn't think anything of it and they pass each other. Wow, and look who it is. His name is Charles, actually. Remember Charles? Charles is the one that, well, got rid of that guy and put him in the bathtub. And Charles was also the one to pick up the phone and call Hobbs in the first place. So, needless to say, Hobbs just dodged a bullet. And if you look at the top of the screen, you see the creepy, murderous guy, Charles. Now he is getting on a train. And at the bottom of the picture, he's getting off the train. And guess what? He bumps into this heavyset man right here. And the heavyset man just kind of looks at him, and Charles doesn't have any expression and he walks away. Now we see the phone is ringing and Art picks it up and he says, "Hello, hello." No one responds. Now we are in Charles's apartment. He was in the middle of grilling a cheese sandwich and he walks to the phone. He dials a number and the phone rings and he says, "Oh, uh, Mrs. Moore? Hi, this is Charles." And you can already know from the scene, Charles is no longer, under possession. He's back to his normal self. And he goes, "Yeah, I don't know if I was drunk, but I think I've been out of it for the past few days. And I just want to know, am I working tonight?" And Mrs. Moore is like, "Charles, you quit. You don't remember? You insulted Harry and he hired someone else." And Charles is like, "What? I don't remember that." And the next thing you know, there's this heavy pounding on his front door. And he's like, "Well, I'm sorry for the insult." And then it's like boom, 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 boom. And so then Mrs. Moore goes, "Goodbye, Charles." And so Charles answers the front door. Whoa! And look who it is. It's that man from the train station that Charles touched. Now this guy is possessed. So he barges into Charles's apartment and, well, let's just say Charles, he meets his demise. Meanwhile, Hobbs, he was looking at the video of the day of the execution just to see if he can get some kind of hints, some kind of clues, and he dozed off a little bit, but his phone started ringing. So that woke him up. So he answers, "Hello?" Oh my god, and look who is calling Hobbs. It's the guy that is now possessed. Look, and he's pouring milk into cereal the same way Charles had did previously. Needless to say, the guy doesn't respond and Hobbs, well, he hangs up his phone. Well, it's the next day, and guess who's at the police station? A linguist. So Jonesy and Hobbs, they meet with him, and the linguist, he looks at the tape of Reese. Because remember when Reese, when he grabbed Hobbs' hand, he was like, "Hush, talking all that kind of stuff." And so the linguist is like, I believe this is some type of ancient biblical tongue, maybe Syrian, Aramaic. Only a few nomadic tribes still use this language to this day. And so Hobbs and Jonesy are like, "Oh, okay. So what was Reese saying?" And the linguist is like, I don't know." It's like, okay. But he says, "You know what? If you give me a copy of the videotape, I'd be more than happy to work on it." So Jonesy, he goes, "Oh, okay then. Why don't I walk you downstairs and the tape, we'll try to have it ready for you in about 15 minutes." Hobbs is at his desk, and once again, his phone rings. He picks it up, and it's a voice, and the voice is saying, "Hey, pal, I got it, something for you." And he gives Hobbs an address to go to. So Hobbs jumps up, and you see Jonesy. So here they are. It looks like they are off to another crime scene. Wow, and when they get to the apartment, look who it is. It is none other than Charles. So Hobbs leaves the bathroom. He kinda looks around the living room, and he sees some writing on the side of the mirror. So he lifts up the mirror and look, once again, we have another clue. And so he calls Jonesy over. He's like, "Hey, Jonesy, look, check this out." And Jonesy, he doesn't know what to make of it. And then Hobbs tells him, "You want to hear something scary?" And then Hobbs says, "I was walking home last night and I passed by this guy. And when we passed each other, he looked me dead in my eyes as if he knew me. And that guy from last night is the dead guy right now in the bathtub." And Jonesy is like, you got to be kidding me. And Hobbs is like, "I swear to you, I'm not kidding. It's him." And they're just looking at each other because at this point, they don't know what to do or what to say to each other. Look at Hobbs. He's back at the station and his mind is just racing because some of the things previously he brushed off, but now he knows, I'm in something, I'm in deep, but I have no clue what it is. So while he's sitting at his desk going over his thoughts, Jonesy is in the office with the lieutenant. So Jonesy and the lieutenant, they're talking about Hobbs. And Jonesy is saying, "Well, whoever is doing all this, they certainly have a thing for Hobbs." And so the lieutenant says, "So how is he?" And Jonesy is like, "Well, how is he ever? He's fine. He's great." And the lieutenant says, "Well, if it starts to work at him, you let me know." And then Jonesy is like, "Well, almost like, what about me? If it starts to work at me, how about I let you know that too?" Kind of jokingly. And the lieutenant just smiles. But look at the lieutenant. Doesn't he look like he's like hiding something up his sleeve? I don't know. So now Hobbs is kind of like, it looks like he's in some kind of basement, kind of like in an evidence area, kind of like, I guess, for cold cases or old files of that nature. So he's going through the Milano file. And within the file, guess what? He finds a map. And just when he's looking at the map, someone calls out to him. And it startles him a little bit, and he turns around, and look who it is, one of his coworkers, Lou. And Lou was like, "Hey, what are you doing in there? What are you working on?" And he goes, "Hey, you find anything interesting?" He's saying little things like that. "Is everything okay?" And Hobbs kind of gives him like this little half nod. And so Lou was like, "Okay, see you Monday." And then that's when the bottom picture, Hobbs looks at him and he goes, "All right, good night, Lou." And then Lou turns and walks away. Wow, all these people are starting to be a little creepy, right? The lieutenant talking to Jonesy. Now you have Lou. "Hey, what you got going there?" Hobbs better watch his back. I'm assuming it's the next day, and his nephew Sam is playing some basketball, and Art is there watching. And then Hobbs is like, "Okay, I'll be back, you guys, in about 10 minutes." And so he turns and starts walking with Jonesy. And they're basically talking about the case. They're trying to figure it out. It's like, okay. So the guy Charles, the guy that we just saw in the bathtub, it looks like he was the one that killed the first guy. But now someone has killed him. So who are we looking for? And they're just trying to sort things out. And now look what we see. We see beautiful scenery. I mean, look at this. Because guess what, you guys? Hobbs is taking a little trip. Remember that map he was looking at from the Milano file? Well, he has taken that map with him and he's going on a little trip. Can you guess where he's going? If you guessed the family Milano cabin, you guessed correctly. Because remember, that's when the policeman Milano, he took his life at the family cabin all those years ago. So, hey, Hobbs is like, you know what? Let me go to the family cabin and let me see if I can find some clues. Even though it was back in 1965, I mean, yeah, you never know. So he gets out his car, puts on his coat, gets his flashlight, and gets to working. So he goes in the cabinet in the cabin, and it's run down, dilapidated, all of that. It's dark in there. And will he find something? So Hobbs goes downstairs in the basement and he takes his flashlight. He's looking around, and then kind of up above, kind of hidden, he sees two books, and he takes them down and puts them on the table to take a look at them. So he quickly flips through the books, and it looks like there's pictures of, I don't know, I guess you would say like demons and things of that nature. And then he finds something in one of the books, and he happens to find a picture. And the picture is actually an old picture of the room that he's in right now. It's kind of like, what? Kind of creepy. He flips the picture over and it says, "Look." Now, remember, in the last apartment, him and Jonesy was checking out the last murder victim. Remember on the wall, it said, "Look." So it's like, uh oh, what is going on here? So he looks around the room because he knows he's in the same room as his picture. But he's like, okay, what is it that I'm looking for? So he kind of looks and he goes, wait, that wall is right here in front of me. So he's looking at the wall, but it's kinda like a blank wall, like, "Okay, what am I supposed to do?" So he's like, "Huh, is there something hidden, you know, in the wall? What's going on?" So what he does is he takes some solvent and he goes up to the wall. So he takes the solvent or, some kind of cleaner. He finds an old rag and he wipes the wall, and look what appears. It's a word. And what is that? What does that say? Azazel. And look, Hobbs is kind of like, ooh, this is a little creepy. So now we see Hobbs getting out of his car, and look who is walking down the street that just got out of her car. That would be none other than Greta Milano. So Hobbs gets out of his car and he goes, "Hey." And she sees it's him and she goes, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm fine. I went up to your family's cabin." And she goes, "Oh, that's great. It's beautiful, isn't it?" And he goes, "Yeah, a lot of flowers and trees, beautiful water. What does Azazel mean?" And look at her face. Her face is like, what? I mean, Hobbs totally caught her off guard. He goes, "Yeah, your father wrote it in the basement on a painted wall, but then he painted over the wall." Now, my dictionary says that word means like an evil spirit of the wilderness. And then one of the books your father had up there in the cabin, it talks about demons getting into you by touch. And Greta just looks at him and she says, "Walk away, Mr. Hobbs." And he's all, "What? Come again? What?" And she says, "If you care even for one human being, please don't take this case." Then he kind of smiles and he tells her, "Hey, it's out of my hands, Miss Milano. I mean, what can I do? It's my job." And she just says, "Goodbye, Mr. Hobbs." And Hobbs is like, "Goodbye, so that's it?" And she says, "Yep, that's it." And she gets in her car and she drives away. And Hobbs is just standing there because he knows something isn't right, and he really thought she would be the one to help him. Like they could partner up or something, or I don't know, and he's just standing there helpless like, "Damn, I'm on my own." Hobbs is back at the police station talking to his boss, the lieutenant, and the lieutenant hands him some phone records. And Hobbs looks at him and he's like, "Are you saying the killer called my house from the scene of these crimes?" And then his boss is like, "Sure looks like it." And Hobbs is like, "Remember when Reese used to call me at all hours of the night?" And his boss is like, "Yeah, but Reese is dead." And Hobbs is like, "Yeah, I know, but there has to be, someone doing this copycat thing or something." And Hobbs is like, "I'm gonna have to change my phone number again." And his boss is like, "God, the more it looks like this is someone on the inside." And Hobbs looks at him, "You mean a cop?" And his boss goes, yeah. It's like, okay. At this point, we kind of can tell that Hobbs is losing his patience with his boss. So anyway, he sits down at his desk and he's like, "Okay, Jonesy, what you got?" And Jonesy hands him a piece of paper and he says, "Hey, I got the translation from the Arabic." He hands it to Hobbs and then Jonesy starts reading it. And the translation says, "I can't enter you by touch, but even when I can get inside you, after I'm spirit, I won't. I will F you up and down, left and right." And then that's when Jonesy's like, Yeah, that sounds like that's in the Bible, right?" Then Hobbs laughs and Jonesy continues. And he says, "If that doesn't work, I have other ways." And they're kind of looking at each other. And it's kind of like, God, we need the translation of the translation. Like, what does this mean? So Hobbs was at the bar. He was by himself, trying to figure out what does all this mean. And then the server's like, "Hey, another beer?" He goes, "Nah, I'm good." And so he's leaving the bar and he's walking down the street. It's dark and he kind of senses someone is like following him or something. And so then he sees a shadow and then he's just literally just starts running, trying to see who it is. Ooh, and look who's looking at him. That's the same guy that had murdered Charles. Oh, look at him. He's watching Hobbs. And Hobbs, he knows he's being watched and he's just looking around, but there's nobody there. Okay, you guys, pay attention because things are going to go quick and it is going to be scary. Now, Hobbs is in the police station. You see the picture at the top. He's doing a little studying. He's kind of like deep in thought. And outside, you see a little cat there. And look at the picture at the bottom. When you're watching this movie, and anytime you see that little yellow haze on the screen, guess what that means? That means the evil spirit is around and it is lurking. And now we see Hobbs. He's just looking out the window, matter of factly. But guess what? The cat is gone. And look where the cat is, you guys. The cat has the evil spirit. And guess what? There's a gentleman getting ready to enter the police station. But the cat kind of catches him before he opens the door, and the cat just nuzzles up to his leg. So, you know what that means, you guys? Now the devil is in the spirit of the guy that is getting ready to enter the police station. No! So now we see the guy. He enters the police station. He goes up to the front desk and he says, "Hey, I'm here to pick up someone because I believe this gentleman happens to be a bail's bondsman." And look what's gonna happen, you guys. The black guy is going to bump into him. So now the evil spirit is in this black guy. No! Oh no, and look what he does. He puts his arm around his coworker, and this coworker also knows Hobbs. So he puts his arm around her and he goes, "Hey, how you doing? You looking good today?" And she goes, "Hey, how you doing? Thanks." But look at her face in the first picture. She gets like a serious dead look on her face, like she's in a trance. And guess what she does? Look at the next picture. She touches her coworker's shoulder. So now the evil spirit is in her coworker. And then guess what? She gets up and guess what she does? She touches Lou. It's like not Lou. Now the evil spirit is in Lou. And now Lou goes straight up to Hobbs's desk. It's like, oh no. And guess what Lou says? Lou says, "Hey, so where'd you go this weekend?" And Hobbs goes, "Oh, I went up to the country." And Lou was like, "Oh, yeah, it's good, huh? It's good to get out of town once in a while." And Hobbs is like, "Yes." And then Lou was like, "Yeah, lovely, fresh air." And Hobbs is like, "Yes." Then all of a sudden Lou goes, "I'm curious. Where'd you go?" And that's when Hobbs is like, "Why do you want to know, Lou? Why do you ask?" And guess what? Lou says, "Come here. I want to tell you something. Don't fall for it, Hobbs. Don't." And Hobbs is looking at him and he's like, "Just come here." And Hobbs uh comes a little closer to him, but not too much. And guess what Lou starts doing? All of a sudden he's all, "Time is on my side." And look at Hobbs. Hobbs is like, "Oh, hell no." Because remember, that was the same song Reese was singing while he was being put to death. Then Lou gets up and he runs into the guy right here with the leather jacket on. And then the next thing you know, the guy in the leather jacket starts singing the same song. Then the guy in the leather jacket, he bumps into this cop here. What was his name? Mike? And look at how Mike is looking at Hobbs. And then Mike starts singing the song, and Mike is like, "You always say." And then look at Hobbs is looking at him like, "Oh, hell no. What is going on in this police station?" It's funny and scary at the same time. So Hobbs, even though he's a little scared, but amazed at the same time. So he starts following Mike and he catches up to Mike and he's all, "Hey, why were you singing that song?" And Mike is like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And he goes, "You were singing." Mike is like, "No, I wasn't." And he's all, "Who's putting you up to this?" And then Mike is like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And look, all of a sudden Hobbs looks up and look, he sees this short little man kinda looking at him, kinda looking weird, and that's when he's like, I bet the spirit is in this mother effer." So Hobbs, he comes out of the police station and he's tracking this guy down and he's walking fast and people on the street are kind of looking at him like, "What's the problem here?" So he's trying to catch up to the short little guy who is with the lady, as you can see, with the fur coat on. And right in the middle of the street, Hobbs says something. He's like, hush, shabba or something like that. Then all of a sudden, the lady in the coat turns around and she goes, "Oh, you know my language." It's like, ooh, because guess what? The evil spirit is in her. And so now the short little guy is like, honey, come on, come on. And so then she turns back to that man right there and touches him again. And ooh, and look how that man, look how he's looking back at Hobbs. And guess what? Then they end up walking down the street and they touch someone. The one of them touches this heavy set guy right here, and then the guy looks at Hobbs and says, "Beware of my wrath." It's like, what? Then he touches this lady right here, and she just looks at Hobbs with this blank stare. And when she passes Hobbs, she touches this short lady right here, and look how the short lady is looking back at Hobbs. So Hobbs knows now the evil spirit is in the short lady. But then the short lady, she touches someone else, who touches someone else, who touches someone else. And Hobbs is literally just looking at the whole block like, what can I do? I can't keep up with this. Oh, and look at this scene right here. This is a good scene. I mean, Hobbs is standing in the middle of the sidewalk and he's helpless. He's like, what the hell can I do? I mean, this spirit keeps going into people. Boom, 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 boom. It's impossible for me to catch. So I don't know what to do. And on that note, you guys, I'm gonna end. I know, it's a cliffhanger. But guess what, you guys? This is just the first half of the movie. All of this happens in the first hour. Wait until you see what happens in the second half of this movie, you guys. I'm not going to give away the ending or anything like that. I'm just going to say, hey, people die, people go on the run. It is going to be a mess. But the question is Hobbs finally going to catch the evil spirit? And if so, how the hell is he going to do it? Hey, you'll just have to watch the movie.
Okay, and on the screen is just some of the people that were in the movie. I always say when you like a movie, go ahead and check out the actors that were in the movie because it'll lead you to another good movie, or maybe a movie you don't like, or you may find something very interesting about the actor that you maybe never knew before. So here they are. So go ahead and check them out. Some of them, of course, we already know. Oh, and Donald Sutherland. Whoa. The actor that played Lieutenant Stanton. Oh, and if you didn't know, he passed away last summer. Oh, I really hated to hear that. He was one of my favorite actors, and he was working all the way up until the end of his life. And he was one of those actors where I'm looking at, let's see what's on Netflix or Amazon Prime. And, oh, let's see, this sounds like a good mini series or whatever. And it's like, oh, Donald Sutherland is in it. It's like, wow. So, yeah, he was working. All the way up to the end. So I'm like, wow. So, I hated that he passed away, but I mean, man, he's been in some good movies. Check him out in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that movie from the 1970s, and it was actually a remake from the original that came out in the 1950s. Check him out there. Backdraft, Ordinary People, A Time to Kill, Hunger Games. Oh, Outbreak. Disclosure. Oh, Disclosure. Yes, good movie. JFK. And The Undoing. Oh, that movie was good, starring Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman. Oh, man. Oh, that was good. All right. I think I've talked enough about that. Oh, and of course, John Goodman. Come on, you guys know John Goodman. You may have grown up watching him on the show Roseanne. I know I did. And then the next thing you know, he just became this big movie star. It's like, whoa, okay. Raising Arizona, of course, The Big Lebowski, Monsters Inc., The Princess and the Frog, Flight. Oh, wasn't that a good Denzel movie? Oh, man, Denzel. Oh, that was a good movie. And what else? And John Goodman was in the latest movie, The Smurfs. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, and of course, James Gandolfini from The Sopranos. Gosh, he's passed away a while ago. Wow, he passed away. Man, he was only 51. He passed away back in 2013. But uh before The Sopranos. He's played in some other stuff as well. Night Falls on Manhattan. Oh, The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. And this is the version that came out in 2009. All the King's Men. Oh, man. He was a good actor. Yeah, unfortunately, he has passed. And you know what? Check out the actor that played the serial killer, Elias. he his role in this movie, didn't it, he kind of remind you of Robert De Niro? I don't know, it was something about him. He reminded me of like Robert De Niro, Taxi Driver. I don't know. He did a really good job. And God, yeah, check out everybody. Of course, Denzel. Just look at all of them too. And also too, like I said, check out the people that may have had just minor roles, because you've seen them on episodes of other shows and things like that. Because I know I have, just like the actor in the second column that played Mike. I'm like, I've seen that face before. So go ahead and check them out. Oh, and we gotta talk about the director. The director was Gregory Hoblet, and he's known for directing, Hill Street Blues. Oh, man. That is a cop show that came out in the early 1980s. And that show, I guess you could say, set the tone for other cop shows that came after it, because it was very gritty, a little more real, I guess you would say, than cop shows previously. Oh, wow, he directed L.A. Law. That was also another hit show, and it was on for several years. Oh, and he directed the movie Primal Fear, starring Ed Norton and, oh God, come on, Richard Gere. There you go. I haven't seen that. God, I haven't watched that movie in years, but that was an excellent movie. Ed Norton is charged with something, and Richard Gere is his lawyer, if I remember correctly. So, yep, yep, yep. Hey, let's see who was a writer. Nicholas Kazan. All right. Now, Nicholas is actually the son of Eli Kazan, and his father directed East of Eden. Oh my God. That is the movie, if I'm not mistaken, that made James Dean super famous. Oh, and his dad also directed On the Waterfront. Marlon Brando. Come on, you guys know that movie. I could have been somebody. I could have been a contender. That's one of people consider that one of the most famous lines in movie history. What he directed, his dad also directed A Streetcar Named Desire. Whoa! And his father, well, he did testify before the House Committee of Un-American Activities. This was back in 1972. And because of this, unfortunately, some of his colleagues lost their careers. Go ahead, and it's a very controversial topic, but you can go ahead and look that up. But okay, let's get back to the son. I bet, the son is like, wait, what about me, Lisa? Yes, the son directed, I mean, he wrote this movie. Excellent writing. Loved the story. Loved it all. And he also wrote Reversal of Fortune, 1990. Oh, you guys have got to watch that movie. Love that movie. It's kind of loosely based on a true story. So, yeah, okay, I think I've ran my mouth enough, right? But anyway, like I said before, the actors that you see in front of you, go ahead and research them and check them out. Well, the question is, do I recommend this movie? And I will say, heck yeah. Two big giant thumbs up. One of the reasons is the story itself. I loved the storyline. It's kind of like, forget Denzel's in it and everybody else. If you just read what the movie is about, it's kind of like, you know what? This is worth a watch. I think I'll watch it. And see, I'm the type, if you don't know by now, I will like a movie just for the story. Because I mean, I've watched movies where the budget was extremely low, the special effects are cheesy, but if that story is good, you got me. Kind of like the movie Blackula that I already talked about. Check it out. I talked about that movie previously. That movie came out in the early 1970s. The special effects, very cheesy. Was a budget low? Yes, it was. But the story was amazing. Not only that, the acting itself was amazing. So when you have that, man, I can overlook the cheesy special effects. I can overlook the boom mic that I see in the shadow on the wall. I mean, I can overlook stuff like that. If you have a tight story, I am there. Also, too, Scream Blackula Scream is an excellent sequel to Blackula. And I talk about that movie too, so check it out. So, yeah, so anyway, excellent story. Love the story. And of course, Denzel, he doesn't hurt, right? Excellent actor. But not only does Denzel do a good job, the whole cast does one heck of a job. And when I say the whole cast, I'm talking about the actors that only just say one or two lines. I mean, I felt like I was at the police station. I felt like I was working there. I felt like hey, Lou, Jonesy, I felt like I knew them. So excellent on that. And what else? Oh, and I love the camera work when it comes to the supernatural. They change the color scheme of the film. And oh, I love that. And then the way they shot it from, I don't know, kind of like aerial style, almost like a drone is looking down. I loved that. And what else? Gosh, yeah, I loved everything about this movie. Very well put together movie. I can't, gosh, what else can I say? So, all right, let's talk a little bit about behind the scenes.
And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, social media, there's a lot of competition out here. So when you take the time to listen to me rant and rave about a particular movie, I really, really appreciate it. So thank you for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my book, The Creeping Things and Other Tales of Madness and Mayhem. Check it out. You can get it on Lulu, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and tons of other places. Okay, you guys. So I got to think of another movie to talk about. So until then, you guys take care, and I will see you next time. Bye.